Jamari Johnson is a naturally gifted pass catcher with the upside to be a special tight end in the NFL.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I'm Damian Parson. That's Keith Sanchez. And today's episode is brought to you by Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use the code Locked On to get up to $500 in bonus credits when you trade $25. And today's episode is all about Oregon's new starting tight end, Jamari Johnson, 6'5", 257 pounds. We're going to break down explain our grade for him, go through some of the concerns with this game. But as always, we start with the pros. And I just said it's 6'5", 257. So the size of a traditional starting tight end in the NFL. Keith, last season, he was targeted 40 times, caught 32 receptions, so only 8 incompletions. So it's a really good turnaround rate when you target Jamari Johnson. 510 yards receiving, 16 yards per catch, 3 receiving touchdowns. What stood out to you about Oregon's, at the time, he was their tight end 2. Now that he's their tight end 1.
Yeah, so first off, DP, I'm going to make a similar statement to I made when we watched Amon Moulton, right? And I was like, wait, they had this guy along with Akeem Messador and who am I missing? Ruben Bain. I'm sorry. Yep. I feel the same way with this, right? Like you had King Sadiq and this guy on the field together, right? Like both of these guys played tight end for Oregon. Listen, Jamari Johnson, he fits the phrase, the notion of this big-bodied middle of the field target. This young man can operate in the short, intermediate, and deep portions of the field. He can operate as your vertical field stretcher. As a tight end, he can operate as a movement piece. He's a very fluid mover. And just going through comparisons, I think with him and Kenyon Sadiq, right? Like, let's just go ahead and compare the teammates. Kenyon Sadiq was obviously a much more muscle-bound player. He may have had more straight line explosiveness. I think Jamari has a little bit more wiggle to him. A little bit more elusiveness in his game. So I think when you talk about that big slot, and sometimes this notion gets used to where it's you get pushed into this because you don't fit either or. I think he will operate in this area out of dominance, meaning this big body, like that big bodied wide receiver or that flex tight end. And so I was really impressed with his tape, DP.
No, I'm glad. It's crazy because I thought, as what you just kind of took us through, I had the same thoughts when I was watching about, number one, how do you have both of these dudes on the same offense? Like it's just like Jesus, and you got DeCarrion Moore, and like it's just they had a wealth of pieces at Oregon and everything. But then also, like you look at Kenyon Sadiq, muscle bound, more explosive. I mean, he was a 4.3 athlete, like just a more just natural, raw, explosive athlete. But watching Jamari, I was like, this dude offers different things than what Kenyon did. I think I'll be honest, I think he's the better route runner of the two, and I think he's better after the catch out of the two, right? And he's also the big, like in terms of height and weight listed. If I remember correctly, Kenyon was 6'3", 245, where Jamari is 6'5", listed at 6'5", 255, 257. Right, so the catch radius, the ball skills, because I think you go back to like the JMU game, right? I think he had the first touchdown in that playoff game against JMU, and the ball was kind of like it was almost overthrown. Like I think Dante Poole put a little bit too much air on it, and then I think it was a JMU game. You saw like Jamari go with one hand, snatch it out the air, and then come down and then fight his way and extend without touching the ground and got the touchdown. Right, like. But he's so like his route running. I think that's one of my favorite traits about him. Like he's a really good salesman as a route runner. Like that stick nod, the double moves, things like that. Like he's well tempoed and patient and whatnot. And just he has a natural feel as a receiving tight end of how to win and whether it's man coverage or at the slot running corner routes and things like that. Beating guys. Hitting a little rocker step as a 6'5", it won't look the same as a receiver doing it, but it's definitely effective. Like And then after the catch, like the ability to make guys miss, stop, start, hard plants, jump cuts, or side steps. I'm like, he's 6'5", almost 260 doing this. Like, this dude looks like an absolute weapon. And I really hope that they feed. I know they got receivers. Evan Stewart's coming back healthy this year. Dante Moore, that's your chess piece right there. Get him the football a lot in 2026.
Yeah, DP is almost head scratching, right? Did you like wait? How did y'all lose again? Right, like when you add him to the mix, right? And that's what we say we love doing the scouting portion, because it really tells the story of the talent of a team, right? Just how talented they actually were. Comparing him and King and DP is almost like the George Kittle and Travis Kelce conversation, right? Well, I would, who's 1A out of that situation, right? Would be, what are you asking them to do, right? And I think that's the conversation between
your scheme
Sadiq and Jamari Johnson. And I probably put Jamari more in the Travis Kelce bag, right? The fluid mover and things of that nature. But I agree with you. The open field when he's in space, being able to create and make defenders miss is also a big portion of his game, because like I said, just being able to throw the ball short, right? You're talking about tight end screens, tunnel screens, even putting them out at wide receiver and letting them operate in that capacity, and forcing cornerbacks to tackle this big 6'4", 6'5", 250-pound player. And you see it with him, right? Like there's just enough physicality in his run after the catch ability to where he's difficult to bring down, right? Like he's I wouldn't consider him, like a easy guy to bring down. It's just like he's not a bowling ball, right? Where it's just just out physical and everybody, but he has enough tenacity to him. I think that's a good word. Enough tenacity to him to be able to be a difficult guy to bring down on the perimeter.
No, 100%. I think, and honestly, I would like to even further that along. I like to see him start using that stiff arm more after the catch too. Because when you got long arms like that, hey, just stiff arm a guy. Like I said, you don't have to be you don't have to be Rob Gronkowski just bowling ball through defenders and no, you don't. There's more. As grandma used to say, there's more ways to skin a cat. Like there's more ways to get it done. You know what I mean? So just being able to, because he already has the self-creation, that ability to, if I catch the ball on the OTB route or option route, I can square a guy up and make a miss, right? Like, and it's just like, again, to see him do those things at his listed height and weight, you're like, you shouldn't be able to just put a move on a guy like that quick. Matter of fact, like, and not just a move, like stringing together moves. Like,
I think that's the more impressive. It's not just one; it's consecutive moves. So you talk about moves, balance and body control. All of those things are impressive for a guy of his size, because, like you said, you're talking about a tight end. Usually, tight ends, you may get one jump cut, and then we're going forward, right?
Right.
They would do that. But this young man, I can't remember what game it was. I don't know if it was Indiana, but I feel like it was like 2-3 moves, and then I think it was like Indiana. Like jumped, hurdled into the end zone, I believe. So it's just an impressive athletic skill set overall for Jamari Johnson, and I think it's going to prove itself well. Him, being tight end one heading into this upcoming college football season. DP, let's do this, man. We talked about the pros, right? What are the good parts of Oregon tight end Jamari Johnson's game? We discussed that. Now we're about to talk about some of the concerns, right? What are some of the areas of improvement? Some of the areas that we think may put him in a first round, second round grade as far as categorizing him. We'll discuss those things coming up next.
Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Will the Buffalo Bills win the AFC Championship this season? The Bills are currently trading at 15% on Kalshi probability. And if you trade $100, the payout would be $629.20 if they take home the title. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position, trade the draft, pick the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app. Use the code LOCKEDON to get up to $500 in bonus credits when you trade 25. 18 or older only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see Kalshi.com/regulatory. Breaking down the concerns for Jamari Johnson, star tight end out of Oregon, 6'5", 257. Keith, what's some of the concerns that stood out to you on tape?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with something we turned to and kind of something that I hinted at when I gave out the Travis Kelce versus George Kittle comp is gonna be the blocking, right?
Yeah,
and the usage of him in that. Do I mind him being, a part of if you got a bunch set or something like that, and he's crashing down on the edge defender, almost cracking down on the edge defender? I think he can do that, right? But if you're asking him to be on the front side of a play, hand in the ground, and try to move a defensive end out the way, I don't necessarily feel 100% comfortable with that. So he's going to have to find unique ways. He's in my opinion, right now in his game, he's a getting away guy. And what I mean is that blocking, he's probably going to be more of sealing guys off. He's going to have to reach block a couple defensive linemen, beat them to a spot and get in the way. And make them fight through you. I'm not going to count on him to be able to move people off the line of scrimmage. It doesn't appear that that's part of his skill set right now.
Yeah, that's kind of where that's where I was going to start too, Keith. I think it was the Minnesota game I was watching, and when I talked about Trey Green, same thing. Like well, a little different. I think he's a better blocker than Trey Dez. I think Trey like 237. Yeah, we got to bulk you up, big dog. We got to bulk you up just a little bit, to be able to be a point of attack blocker in the NFL. But, watching the Minnesota game, I remember watching a couple of reps where Jamari fires off, he makes contact, he gets some push, but his technique is not great. Like he's, again, you're 6'5", I get it. But he's head over skis. Like he's bending at the waist and not the knees. And I saw that I think it was an edge defender or a linebacker. He got up to him. They made contact. He got 2 steps, with some push. And then the guy shed him, right? Got him off of him because you're giving up leverage, right? So I want to see him get better technique-wise. Also, even though he's 257, can you bulk up like a little bit? Can you get a little stronger at the POA? I think lower body wise, I don't have as much concern with upper body. Can you latch, strain, and stay connected to your defender, right? And like you said, he may be more of a getting away guy, or like I can say, just set the screen, right? Like I don't need you to just set the screen, big dog. Like let me get out to the perimeter and let's make the plays. He might be more. And as we flush out this conversation about run block, Keith, he's probably more of a wide zone run blocker than like you talk about the reach blocks and stuff like that.
Yep.
Then going to, hey, I'm going to what was it, like the Indianapolis Colts, and there's a lot of power run game, right? And stuff like that where you got to take hat on the hat and you got to drive a guy. Like no, let's put him on, let's put him laterally, let him get out there. You may not even have to. You may have to tag, get a little chip on the edge to let the guard or tackle be able to get out there and reach him, and then you just get to the perimeter. You get to the corners, you get to the safety, you get to the backer. I think that's where you probably want to utilize him as a run blocker. But I definitely want to see the technique improve because, like, when you're 255, you would think that hey, you be able to sustain some of these blocks. You got to be able to sustain it better. You can't be bending at the waist like that. Like we see offensive linemen get thrown to the ground because of things like that, right? Not bending at the knees. He's got to work on that technique overall.
Yeah, and I wonder, DP, if that's going to put him in a potential scheme-specific situation. I think him being a part of the passing tag, right? I think he'll thrive in both situations. But if you're going to be one of those teams that's going to rely probably heavily on one tight end, and then maybe I'm not sure, like, what if that was the different setup between him and Kenyon, right? Like when Oregon made decisions about who's on the field for what, it maybe came down to run blocking for certain situations, right? Who became tight end 1 and tight end 2, because I do think that they're, like you talked about, right? There are things that Jamari Johnson does better than Kenyon Sadiq at, right? Like, and so what it, when you're talking about splitting hairs, what did it come down to? I'll say this also. I'll be interested, and I think he's a plenty good enough athlete, right? And when we reveal our grades, I'll be able to prove how I feel about it. But I do believe, I'm interested in what his actual 40 time is, vertical and broad, because I think he's a fluid athlete. I just wonder how explosive he is as far as the testing part of it. And you get that with some of these guys, right? Like they're more 4, 5, 8, straight line guys, but they can have good balance and body control, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Not all the time does running a fast 40 lead to having good balance. Like we see wide receivers all the time, they run 4.3, 4.4s, and what we talk about, DP, how stiff they are, how straight line they are. So it's not something that always directly correlates. But I look at Jamari Johnson, and I think when it comes down to potential draft impact, right? Like I think for some teams, if he runs a 4.59 or that's not bad for a tight end.
No.
But if he runs somewhere in the high 4.5s or mid 4.6s, right, somewhere in there, will that still put him as a top of the first round draft pick? I think it's going to be an interesting little situation with him, unless he continues to build the hype throughout the entire season and the production, is off the charts.
Yeah, I definitely, that was something I thought about too. I was like, okay, what type of impact do you bring vertically to an offense, right? Especially when you see him flexed out a lot, and you see him get some of the, just like Travis Green and stuff. You see him get they ISO you, right? They want to create that mismatch and get you the one-on-one. Well, okay, can you run that 9 route? Can you run the vertical route and win on that route, right? And separate, I'll put like that, because you can win on that 9 route on the back shoulder, right? Or on the 50-50 ball, but can you actually separate on those type of routes? Do you have that type of speed? I think the other thing too, Keith, with knowing that he's going to be a highly flexed out type of tight end, like, okay, you get flexed into the like you talked about earlier, the power slot, the big slot. Okay, what if you're playing a team that plays a lot of man coverage, like a lot of press man, bump and run coverage? I didn't see a lot of reps to see what his process would be handling physicality at the line of scrimmage, where guys want to crowd you, take the air out of your route, right? Try to collapse the route early. Do you have a answer to that? Do you have counters to that? Of course, 6'5", 257. You assume you can, if they got a little 5'9", 5'10" nickel, you can bully your way to your spot. But if you're dealing with a Nick Emanwari or a Kyle Hamilton, one of these safeties playing the nickel spot, where it's like, okay, you kind of match up size, strength, and athlete. You're probably a better athlete. You know what I mean? I can't just bully you out the way. Like, what is your counter to that situation? That's one of the things I'm gonna be looking forward to seeing with him, Keith, is just, all right, what happens when you face press coverage? Like, because when you're flexed out like that, you're going to see it, especially in the NFL. You're going to get, like, teams going, like, you know what? We're going to play too high, 2-man under, and we're going to make your quarterback have to make tight window throws. Can you get to your spot? We're going to shade it inside if you in the slot. We're not going to give you the inside release. We're going to force you to have to work your way to wherever your route's taking you, right? And that's where I want to see him just kind of develop. That's the next tier, next step of development, is having those counters and those answers for that.
Yeah, and if not that, DP, he's going to have to be spectacular in contested catches, right? And if he's on the outside, you're going to have to be able to work the back shoulder, or if you're throwing it front side, he's going to have to be a guy that can go up and get it, right? Like then that's when that vertical jump and explosiveness is going to come into play. So I think that this season is going to be interesting for him, because I agree with you that there's still more reps to be seen, right? To be able to paint the complete picture of who he is. And that's just being in different situations, which hopefully should come with him being a tight end 1 in the offense now and not having to play tight end 2.
And DP, to your point, real quick, he contested catches. I was looking at the numbers now. He was only throwing 2 contested catch situations all season last year.
Yeah, and one of them he converted. Might have been against Indiana again, I believe.
It was against D'Angelo Pons, which is a tight end versus a smaller corner.
What you talked about, right? Like being a small corner.
Yeah, like that makes sense. But if you're facing a bigger body guy, like if y'all face Notre Dame and they put Leonard Moore on you, that's 6'2" with long arms that can run with you, jump with you, and can play the catch point. And even on that rep, I didn't feel like he got a lot of elevation off the ground on that rep against D'Angelo Pons. It was just, I'm bigger than you, and the ball is just higher. In a good spot too. Yeah, it was a very accurate throw. So yeah, the athleticism is definitely going to be a nice question for him to answer this season and going into the draft.
Yep, I agree with DP. Let's go ahead and do this, man. We hinted at it already. I kind of gave mine away a little bit at the top of the show. We're going to talk about the draft grades, right? What grade did we give Mr. Jamari Johnson, the Oregon tight end, heading into the 2026 college football season? Let's discuss that coming up next.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in America. It's all because of you, our everydayers. Explain the grade, Keith. What grade did you give Jamari Johnson, tight end out of Oregon?
Oh, DP, this one I battled between a first and a second round grade. This was difficult because I'm trying to, because I had to put in context also. He had fairly decent production for a tight end too.
Yeah.
Like 500 yards catching, like that's pretty decent. It's not going out the water before a second tight end.
Right.
In the NFL, in the offense, it's pretty doggone good. So 500 yards, I believe. He had 5 touchdowns on the year. I have that 3 touchdowns. I'm sorry,
3 touchdowns
on the year. So I gave him a late first, DP. I gave him a late first because I thought of, we always talk about that gray area in the back end of the first round. And then some of those teams that, that are fairly good NFL teams that you usually can project may be around that area. And could they use tight ends, right? And then also projecting out that area you can kind of take a swing on prospects, right? And he's the type of prospect that I think the back end of the first round, you take a shot on. A big 6'4", 6'5", athletic tight end, middle of the field guy, can do some really good things with the ball in his hands. I think is a fairly good selection if you're taking a swing.
Yeah, no, I like that, Keith. I gave him a top 20 grade, Keith. I really like this kid. I really like this kid. And of course, like, you got to see better, how can you improve? Can you develop as a run blocker? That's going to be a big thing to really say, okay, where's your ceiling? And like you talk about, maybe scheme fit, team fit, like maybe like we talked about, some teams may not take you. If you are, this is a gap scheme, gap running scheme, power running scheme, you may not be the tight end for them if they want you to be in line 80% of the time, blocking defensive ends and edge rushers. That may not be the case, but with his ability as a pass catcher, I think he could be a special tight end, Keith. And so I give him a top 20 grade. And I even flush out a little bit more. I watched Tyler Warren, who had a successful rookie year with the Colts, right? A lot of manufacturer stuff there. I watched him go top 20. He went, 15th overall. And you remember that was a draft where we did not budge. We had Colston Loveland as tight end 1, and the NFL saw it the same way. And he went top 10 to the Chicago Bears. And once he got going in the Chicago Bears offense, that offense opened up for Caleb Williams and the rest of those guys. Once Colston Loveland got healthy last year as a rookie, and I think he led them in receiving yards, I think it was. And he missed a good portion of the first part of the season not being completely healthy and everything. And he went top 10. Tyler Warren went top 15. When I put the tailor tape between Jamari and Tyler Warren, I'm taking Jamari. Like, Tyler Warren's a rather run blocker.
So no, I was gonna say I agree with that, and it's funny because your thought process was similar to mine. I went comparing to past tight ends, right? And I was like, him versus King Sadiq, and then obviously I gave King Sadiq the nod just because of the run game part, right? Like, and how dominant he was as a run blocker. I agree with you. I thought about Tyler Warren, and I'm like, I'll probably take this guy over Tyler Warren, right? Then I thought about him versus Colston Loveland. I'm taking Colston, right? Like, and I had to just kind of compare and contrast both before. So I kind of had the same process.
I definitely with exact same problem. I was just going through. I was like, man, this past tight end, the last 2 drafts and stuff like that. But I think, comparing him to Tyler, like I said, Warren is a more power player, stronger at the point of attack as a run blocker and everything like that. But I don't have to scheme to get the ball to Jamari.
Tyler. I mean, and that's the part too, right? We're part of Tyler's, draft slotting or draft hype, I guess you can say. It was not a large part. Let's see. There was a good percentage of it, a good chunk of it was production based, right? Was that he had so much production, he got so many touches, so many reps,
splash plays, wild plays, all that type of stuff, which is like, that's cool. But if you get to the NFL offense, like the Colts, I remember
work within the scheme, when you're not the number 1 option, but you the number 2 or number 3, and
you got to run routes,
be open, you
got to get open, things like that. Jamari, I truly believe as a pass catcher, I think he could be a special talent, a guy that can win 1-on-1, things of that nature. You talked about Travis Kelce, Keith. Like, Travis Kelce was never a dominant run blocker. I think I talked about that yesterday. I talked about Trey Dance Green. I was like, we would never confuse Travis Kelce with Gronk as a run blocker. You know what I mean? We'll never do it, but it's all about what you actually got to do.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and drop a couple NFL comps, and Travis Kelce. I didn't use him as one because I just think that's unfair.
It's unfair.
Yeah, I thought about Jordan Reed,
Mm,
the tight end from the Washington Commanders, a few years ago, just with
yeah.
that flexibility, and then I thought about Darren Waller also. That was the two tight ends I thought of because both of those guys can operate. They can be movement pieces, flexed around. We're not asked to do dominant things in the run game, right? That situation. And then they kind of both operated at these pseudo hybrid wide receiver types, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I went with both of them. And then you know what? I'm gonna let you drop your comps, and then I have a question. We'll have a question to wrap the show.
Okay. Yeah. No. So for me, Keith, I went with because he's a commentator right now. I went with Greg Olsen, who used to play for the Bears and the
I actually
Panthers.
like that one. Yep.
I went with Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen was 6'6", 254. He ran a 4. I don't think people realize he ran a 4.51. Like Greg Olsen was an athlete coming out, man. And watching that connection between him and Cam Newton all those years in Carolina after the Bears, I think was still just stupid for letting him go and everything. And he went to Carolina, and he was such a special player. Like even when they didn't have good receivers, yeah, he was the guy. And I look at he wasn't I would never say he was a dominant blocker, something like some elite just people mover or body mover.
He was
Was more than
effort,
functional. Yeah, high effort. He was functional, above average guy, but he was special as a receiver. Like just he was always where he needed to be. He was always open. He made tough grabs. I think like if I remember correctly, I think like him and Cam had like a big game against the Legion of Boom in Seattle and everything like that. Like he was just such one of the most underrated tight ends in NFL history. I don't think people really give him the credit he deserves. So when I look at Jamari, I was like, man, I can mold you into that. Like I feel like you can be in, and maybe he probably gives you more. Jamari gives you more after the catch than Greg Olsen did, right? Greg Olsen was a straight line guy, 4.51. I wouldn't say he had the same agility and elusiveness of a Jamari Johnson. Like we said, can string together jump cuts and moves and plants and stuff like that. Yeah, that's kind of the comp I landed on, Keith, was Greg Olsen.
DP, I like that. And I also like the shout out for Greg Olsen because I think if we look over the past, we got to go 20 years now, right? Because it's been some years. Crazy, man. Time is flying. But he's not listed in enough top tight end lists of, just impact guys and, guys that, but even honestly potentially change the game because he was on the brink of those tight ends converting. So when you see the Trey McBrides and, all these different guys and even honestly, offenses running passing games through tight ends, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a combination of him being in a small market in Carolina and then, people just not liking Cam Newton, right? that some of that went to him a little bit. I want to do this, DP. I'm going to ask this question to wrap the show real quick. Does Jamari Johnson, because this is the part that I got hung up on, I want you to answer how you felt about this. If you draft him, do you feel like you need two? Meaning that, do you feel like you need a complementary piece out there, similar to when we talk about running backs and you have this kind of gadgety type of running back, and you feel like, all right, I'm gonna need to draft a power guy, right? Or if you have the power guy, I need to draft the pass catching back. Do you think you need to draft two or have two in the stable?
So I don't think I view it similar to how I view Colston Loveland. And remember, people like the conversation about Colston Loveland was like, oh, he can't block at all. And I'm like, we watched the film. It's like, I don't know where you guys are getting this from. Like,
people can't expect tight ends to block like Penei Sewell also. Like,
it's just like Rob. I think Rob Cousins is probably one. He's my favorite tight end of all time. He ruined it for everybody. You know what I mean? It's just like Rob was out there doing things that you don't do at tight end, against defensive tackles and things like that, and it made everybody want that same thing. But I look at like Colston Loveland. I think Loveland was again playing at Michigan a more. I think he was a more refined blocker than Jamari. I think Jamari has the upside and everything, work with the technique, get a little bit stronger with the lat strength and strain. And I think that you can utilize him as a tight end one. But similar to what they did with Colston Loveland, we had Cole Kmet as like the vet in the room. You know what I mean? As a big body guy. And eventually we saw the snap share or the snap situation flip where, okay, we're leaning on Colston Loveland. Cole Kmet, when we go to two tights, yes, you're on the field. But when we're going to one late in the season, we want our best player at that position, and it was Colston Loveland. I think that's a situation with Jamari I could see being the case. But of course, I would like to have two anyway. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think I have to have a second one, but I would like to have another one, more of a vet in the room, just to kind of help him become a pro, help him with, just acclimate himself to the NFL.
Yep. Okay, cool. Now, I thought that just an interesting, potential way to have a look at it. Yeah, in a conversation that maybe had. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast all by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all can talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.